Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. So I'm going to talk a bit about formulation today, and obviously this is based on my experiences so far and kind of my knowledge of formulation. And I guess I heard quite a lot about formulation when I was first starting in psychology, and I was quite confused about what it was. It sounded a lot more complicated than I think it actually is. And I was kind of reading up on it and trying to read books on it. And I'll put kind of some resources in the description and also some references and things to the formulations that I talk about. But basically I felt like it would have been really useful to just have a kind of quick, simple video to explain it to me. So I'm hoping that that's what this will provide. So basically, formulation is a hypothesis about what's going on for a client. So it's thinking about what their difficulties are, what might be maintaining their difficulties, kind of all the factors at play. And it's really, really helpful from a therapist perspective to understand what's happening for a client, and you can kind of put kind of those links together. And it's also really helpful for a client to understand where their difficulties might have come from, what might be maintaining them, to look at some kind of positive strengths that they've got as well, because that can be incorporated into formulations. So yeah, it's basically just kind of working out what's going on for somebody, why that might be happening, all of that kind of stuff. And we formulate every day, really. So if you work in psychology, you've probably got quite an analytical mind anyway, so you might even do this more than other people. But basically, you know, we have situations that happen and we think, well, why did that happen? Why did that person say that like that? Maybe that's because of this, maybe that's because of that. So we're always really formulating and working out what's happening. But it's just kind of doing it in a specific structure. So there are some model-specific formulations. And when I talk about models, I mean things like cognitive behavioural therapy or CBT, psychodynamic psychotherapy. Those are the kind of models that I'm talking about. And there's also some formulations that aren't model-specific. So I've written a little list on my phone to make sure that I actually talk about what I want to talk about. But yeah, I guess the first thing to talk about is that formulation, as I said, is really helpful to use with a client. It's really helpful to just think about yourself, kind of when you're reflecting on sessions or when you're planning for sessions. But it's also really useful to take your formulations to supervision, because you might have like missed something, or your supervisor might say, well, what about this? And you're like, oh yeah, like having a different perspective is really great. And when you have kind of case discussions and things within teams, you're all formulating together then. So that again is another example of formulating. So in terms of model-specific formulations, I'm going to start with the kind of CBT or cognitive behavioural therapy formulation. So the first one, I guess, to talk about, which I think is quite easy to grasp and quite easy for clients to grasp as well, is the CBT formulation. It's a situational formulation. So as the name suggests, you do kind of a formulation for each situation. So it's situation specific, basically. So I'll pop one on the screen now. And as you can see, there's at the top, the kind of situation or the trigger. Then you've got your thoughts, your feelings, your behaviour, and your physical sensations. So this is, you know, what kind of CBT is based on. And basically, all of these boxes are linked and they all influence each other. So if something changes in one of these areas, the other areas will change. So if your thoughts change, that will change your feelings, your behaviour, and your physical sensations. So I kind of give an example to a client of, I might say, say if I was socially anxious and I got invited to a party, that would be the situation or the trigger. So being invited to a party. And then my thoughts might be, I don't want to go. What if no one speaks to me? What if I say something stupid? And a lot of those kind of anxiety-based thoughts often start with what if. So they would kind of be some of the thoughts in there, and then feelings. I might be feeling really scared, really anxious, uncomfortable. In my body, I might have like a funny tummy, my heart might be racing. And then because of that kind of my behaviour, I might either not go to the party, which if I don't go, that means that I'm never going to prove to myself that it's okay. And next time I get invited to a party, I'm going to experience exactly the same things. The anxiety is just going to be exactly the same. Or I might go, but I might kind of stand in the corner because I'm really nervous, and I might look scared, and people might think, oh, she's kind of keeping herself to herself. Maybe she doesn't really want to kind of talk to anyone. And then they might not come over and talk to me. And then it might be that all those thoughts, see, nobody talked to me, that was awful, never want to go to a party again, etc., etc. So it can just maintain that cycle. And what we want to do in therapy is break those arrows and break that cycle of anxiety. So we can do that by things like thought challenging, can help to identify more balanced thoughts rather than kind of just really keep holding on to those negative thoughts. Graded exposure, that can help to change our behaviour. Relaxation strategies for the physical sensations. So the idea is if something changes in one of those boxes, we can change everything else. So if you identify different thoughts and your thoughts are more balanced, you're likely to behave differently, you're likely to feel differently, you're going to experience different things in your body. So that's kind of the situational formulation, and you might end up with loads of these for a client because you might look at different situations kind of together in therapy. And then another one that kind of matches in quite nicely with this, but is more of a longer term formulation, so kind of looking over your life rather than that specific situation, kind of encompasses more of the context, is a longitudinal formulation. So I'll pop that one up on the screen as well. So basically you can think about as well with this kind of early experiences. You can think about core beliefs, which are kind of those intrinsic beliefs about, you know, how a client feels about themselves. You can think about putting some strengths in there, and this is more of not a situation specific formulation. It's kind of gathering all of the evidence in one document. And a formulation should always be amended, updated. You can look at this throughout therapy and kind of go back to it, things added in. So I think that's a really nice thing about this one. The one that I kind of use, I think might be a mixture of a few different ones. So I'll, have a little look, but I can also pop some other examples of different formulations in the description as well. So yeah, I think those formulations are really helpful and quite easy for kind of clients to get their head around. I think it's really nice to kind of help them to kind of understand themselves better, which is really important. And I always think that if you're, as a client, if you're making the same decisions and there's no change in your behaviour, at least you're doing it in an informed way and you understand why you're doing it and you're not just being reactive to something. And I think that's really powerful to have a good understanding of yourself. So I think that formulation is really, really important. And a big part of therapy is helping the client to understand themselves better and kind of the reasons behind why they do certain things or why they might find certain things difficult. So another type of formulation is a psychodynamic formulation. So a example of a psychodynamic formulation, I'll just pop Lemmer's model up here. And I think that this is obviously my personal opinion, but I think that a lot of formulations are kind of similar. Like once you get your head around one style of formulation, it's kind of quite easy to think about other styles of formulation. Sometimes the wording is just very specific to the model, or the things that are kind of focused on and highlighted within the formulation are very specific to the model. So with the psychodynamic formulation, there's a lot in there about context, which I think is really great. There's going to be you're going to be writing a lot about early childhood, attachment stuff, all those things in psychodynamic theory that are really important. You're going to be writing things about defences, which you wouldn't look at in CBT because it's a different way of looking at things. And if some of this doesn't make sense, that's fine, because obviously you need to have kind of knowledge of psychodynamic theory to then use the psychodynamic formulation. So yeah, that's why it's kind of, again, model specific. But there are also some formulations that aren't model specific that you can use kind of no matter what model you're using. And if you're using a bit more of an integrative approach where you integrate different models of therapy, you might want to use one of these formulations. So an example is the 5 Ps formulation. So this again is really, really helpful, I think, to use with a client. There's some formulations you might more think about yourself and look at yourself. Maybe sometimes the psychodynamic formulation, you might more use that in supervision possibly. It just kind of depends, I guess, what's in there and being kind of sensitive. And, you know, I think, yeah, it just kind of depends. And also you don't want to kind of confuse the client. So like you might think, oh, do you know what, I'm going to formulate someone from a CBT model and I'm also going to formulate from a psychodynamic perspective because I really want to look at loads of different things and get a really good picture of the client. But you probably wouldn't like talk to the client about both of those formulations in sessions because that would probably be really confusing. So yeah, but yeah, so the 5 Ps formulation is one that you can use kind of across models with whatever model of therapy you're using. So you can talk a bit about the difficulties, what's maintaining the difficulties, positive factors, if there's been like a specific event, what kind of things led up to or impacted that event that's happened, and that might be the event that's kind of brought them to therapy. So that's also a really good model to use as well, and I'll obviously pop that up on the screen. So yeah, I guess this is like a really quick, maybe not so detailed welcome to formulation. I guess I just wanted it to be as simple as possible. I'm really hoping that what I've said has made sense because I've tried not to go into too much detail, give a bit of an overview, but kind of also give hopefully an explanation that makes sense. So formulation doesn't seem like something that's a bit like confusing. And yeah, what do I do with this? It's just something you're doing all the time. You're doing it in everyday life. It's really, really useful. It's a great way of kind of using a formulation in supervision is great. It's a great way of helping a client to understand more about themselves. It's a great way of you understanding the client better. So, you know, you can help to decide with them what model of therapy would fit them best. So yeah, I think it's really, really helpful. And I think formulation is often something that's great to use in kind of early sessions. So say if you're using the 5 Ps formulation, start to kind of fill that out with the client and you can look back over it and like add things to it. With the situational formulations, you can look back on them and see how things have changed. So that's a really nice way of thinking about progress in therapy as well, I think, which can be really nice for a client to be like, see, this was how you were feeling before about this situation, and actually this is how you're feeling now. And it's really nice to look back on and think about that progress. And I think it also kind of helps people to see that without changing some of these things, so particularly with the situational formulation, without changing anything in these boxes, things are going to carry on as they are. So it shows how important it is to kind of work towards that change, I guess, which can also be really helpful. So yeah, if there's any like questions or if there's anything that I'm not explained properly, I really hope it all made sense, then please just let me know in the comments below, and I'll try and answer the questions as best I can. And as I said, I'll put some resources and things in the descriptions as well. So yeah, thank you so much for listening. If you liked this video, I'd love you to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel to see more videos like this. Thanks, bye.